And good morning. Welcome to another Conversation at the Table. I am Chad Bresson. I am the pastor at the Table of Los Fresnos here in Los Fresnos, Texas. And so good that you are able to be with us this morning. We do these conversations at the table a few times a week, and so glad that you're able to join us here on this Friday. So, how is your Friday? What's your week been like? Have you done anything this week that you haven't done ever before? Or have you done anything this week that isn't part of your typical routine? For myself, I can think of a few things that we've done. One thing that we did that we're going to talk about today is last evening, we were able to get on with the Rotary and honor the high school seniors here at Los Fresnos High School. That was pretty cool. We were part of it. We have a son who is graduating this year, and that leaf blower over there wasn't blowing just a few seconds ago. So anyway, we have a senior in high school, and Luke is graduating this year. And of course, there are lots of things that are different for Luke this year, as well as his fellow seniors. We're really proud of Luke. Luke's been great. He's worked really hard. I'm glad that he is finally able to graduate and finally able to see this next chapter in life, see where he's going to go, see where he's going to end up. And I really am proud of the way he's handling this as a challenge. We're going to talk a little bit about that, though, because Luke isn't the only one who's having to navigate this as a senior. There are all sorts of others. I think the superintendent, Gonzalo, said 890. Something like that, upwards, almost close to the 900. So there's many that are in the same boat as Luke. So I don't want to make it seem like he's the only one going through this. But he and I have had some great conversations about this particular season in life. And of course, the class of 2020, they're experiencing something no other class has experienced before when it comes to graduation season. Last night we were reminded it was the 1 year anniversary of the baccalaureate. There was no baccalaureate this year, no senior skip day. All those different things that are part of the rites of passage for a senior, they're not here this year. We're probably going to have a graduation ceremony. That's going to be great. It's not going to look or feel, though, like any other graduation ceremony, but there will be one. But it's just again another reminder that all of this is different. There's nothing about this that is anything like what we have seen previously. I had a Dodger graduate, in 2016, and this feels totally different even for the parents. But as Luke and I talk about this, one of the things that we talk about, it's very easy for Luke and his classmates to kind of feel like this is unfair. Like this isn't fair. Life has thrown us a curveball, and it's very easy then to think this is unfair. I don't like this, and just kind of throw your hands up and say, So we're going to talk a little bit about this. And again, Luke is doing great, but Luke's life is a microcosm of everything that we're going through, everything that we have to deal with. Life is different for them in a very acute way, because this is a season in their life which is loaded with and full of benchmarks. It's part of their rite of passage. But for the rest of us, we're also having to navigate a very confusing world in which things are different. The normal is not, and we're still is and this week, in trying to help us navigate through the confusion of even the new normal, life with some restrictions lifted, but not all of them, still doing the social distancing, still wearing the face mask, still having the 6 feet and all the other things that go with social distancing. In thinking about that, we've been looking at Acts 4 this week, because this is a part of the life of the early church there. This is part of the book of Acts in which the early church is trying to navigate things that are happening to them, things that are unfair. Peter and John are arrested for preaching the gospel, and the early church, they report back to their community, their little gathering there in Jerusalem, And in that report, they say this is what's happened. And they're arrested and then scolded for preaching the gospel. They pray. And they pray for boldness. They pray for boldness to continue to proclaim the death and resurrection of Jesus that has changed their lives. They want other people's lives to be changed as well. But what's interesting about that particular prayer is they start off the prayer by actually praying through a psalm. They pray through Psalm 2. Now, Psalm 2 is a coronation psalm. Psalm 2 is the psalm that was sung when Israel's kings were coronated. And so this is on the lips of the early church. For one thing, they have seen Christ's coronation. That comes up in Acts 2. Peter says, we've seen it. We saw it and when Jesus ascended into the heavens, we saw him ascending to the right hand into his throne of the Father. So they have seen Christ's coronation. But that fuels their proclamation of Christ's death and resurrection. And they are praying for boldness. But they start off with Psalm 2. And here is, and Dr. Luke, as he's chronicling for us, he quotes from Psalm 2 that part that they were highlighting in their prayer. And here it is. Why do the Gentiles rage and the people plot futile things? The kings of the earth take their stand, and the rulers assemble together against the Lord and against his Messiah. So notice the movement here. Again, quoting from this piece of Psalm 2, notice this movement. This becomes important for this early community of faith there in Acts. The nations, the peoples, the kings, the rulers. It's going from general to specific. From general peoples all the way down to kings and rulers. See, kings and rulers, they give voice and action to the way the people are feeling and what the people believe. You can see this in the actions and the beliefs and the speeches of the kings. And all of these, the peoples, the nations, the kings, this is a unified front against the Messiah. Also notice the numerical movement here. It is moving from general to specific, from the many to the one. And of course, this is being fueled by the imagery of formidable numbers. Formidable numbers. The way both the psalmist and the early church are looking at it, it looks like the whole world is against the Messiah. Peoples, nations, and then kings and rulers. And certainly they believe they've seen it, and they know they've seen it. The whole world conspiring and then executing Jesus, the Messiah. And now, on the back end of this, they feel like the whole world, and they see the whole world being against them. The very people that conspired against the Messiah is now conspiring and against them and threatening them, but telling them to stop spreading the gospel. So all the world is raging, that word, all the world is raging against Jesus. All the world is raging against Jesus and his followers. The Messiah, of course, is Jesus. So as we look at this particular psalm and as we look at Acts 4, we see this early church praying this prayer because they see good news. They see the good news that even though the world is raging, even though the world is telling them, hey, stop talking about the resurrection, stop talking about Christ's death, even though they have this whole world seemingly against them, especially in the arrest of Peter and John, the good news for them is Jesus cares. Jesus knows. He is still on his throne. He hasn't gone anywhere. All of these nations, peoples, and kings someday will answer to King Jesus because he is on his throne. He is orchestrating this all. And they also understand, the rest of Acts tells us, they know that Jesus, he's not just somewhere absent in the heavens. He's also with them in the midst of it all. And that's the good news for Luke and the seniors and for us. That's the good news. The good news for Luke and the seniors and any one of us is that even though it seems as though the world is raging in confusion. Now, again, the coronavirus, COVID-19, they're not conspiring in the same way in the sense that, oh yeah, we want you to stop proclaiming the gospel. But the effect is the same. The effect will be a world that is raging with this virus, a world that is raging about this virus, pretty soon we begin to think Jesus doesn't care. Jesus isn't in control. Jesus is somehow missing. And we can begin to not only think that, but then start to act like that's the case. And we may know it not to be true, but in our actions, in our speech, we can talk as if Jesus has somehow gone missing and that he's not on his throne. Well, you know what? We come back to Acts 4 and we start praying with this early church. We have to begin right where they do, with Jesus on his throne. Jesus is not only on his throne, Jesus is not only in control, but Jesus cares. Jesus is with us in the middle of the mess. He doesn't fix the mess. He doesn't make it all go away. He's never promised that. But he is with us. And that's good news. Jesus is on his throne and he is with us. And Acts 4 bears that out. So when we start to think that life is unfair, the seniors start to think, man, this is so unfair. I'm not getting to do any of what I thought I was going to be able to do. And this rite of passage isn't what I wanted it to be. And we begin to think that way. We come back to this, and even in the unfairness of it all, we know that Jesus is with us. He is with us, and someday there will be an end. Someday there will be an end to coronavirus. Someday there will be an end to COVID-19. He promises at the end he is going to dispense with all of the sickness, all the tears, all the suffering, all the sickness. That will happen someday. But right now, he's not promising that. He's promising to be with us. He's promising, you know what? I care. I'm in control. I'm with you. That's his promise. That's our good news. That's the good news for the seniors. That's good news for us. And that's our conversation at the table today. If there's something that you'd like the conversation at the table to tackle, leave it in the comments. If you got a prayer request, please let us know. Again, be with us over the weekend. We have another conversation at the table tomorrow. We'll be doing another Mythbuster. This Mythbuster tomorrow is coming from the book of Job. And it's a good one. So join us again tomorrow for that Mythbuster. And then on Sunday, 10:30, right here on Facebook and on YouTube, 10:30, our Sunday service, we will be looking at quarantine and the story of Joseph. So I encourage you, be with us, and again, leave your comments, leave your concerns, leave your prayer requests. We want to hear from you. So I encourage you throughout this Friday, throughout this weekend, to stay safe, stay healthy, stay connected, stay home as much as possible. But remember this, Jesus has you. He promised. We are loved by Jesus for the love of Los Fresnos. Have a great Friday.